Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Hunkered in the Bunkered. Today is going to be a little bit different. Today is specifically for my students. We're going to look at Unit 6, Donkeys versus Elephants. And because we're not in class together, I've somehow got to manage to squeeze 5 days worth of lecture notes into one video. So hopefully it won't be too boring. And let's go. Before we talk about political parties and I kind of explain where we are today, we need to go back and talk about the history. So the first PowerPoint we were going to look at is called History of Political Parties. First of all, you got to know what a political party means. It just basically means this: a group of people that have similar beliefs and ideas about life or about how government should work. Today, political parties are very influential on getting certain people elected. That's sort of their function now. Raise money, campaign, endorse each other, and blah, 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 blah. This chair is so loud. Now, there are all kinds of political parties found throughout the world, folks. There's one-party systems, and as you see here, you see totalitarians and dictatorships and authoritarians and empires. And when you see a one-party system, that means only one group of people are in charge. It doesn't have a positive reputation. We have a rare political system. We have what's called a two-party system, which means that two parties control most of the government. I understand that we have more than that. There are a lot of minor and third parties out there, like the Green Party and the Tea Party and blah, blah, blah. But they don't control things. Mostly, we have two parties, Republicans and Democrats, and that's rare. Most democracies found throughout the world are this last one, which is called a multi-party system. You can find this in the United Kingdom, Japan, Israel, Canada, Germany. Everywhere where they have a democracy, they have more than 1-2 parties. They have many parties in control. And a lot of people argue that's what we should have here in America. So like I said, a one-party system is a negative thing. I mean, mostly. It means that a single party controls everything, year after year after year. Most of them come from socialist, fascist, communist countries, like these people. Joseph Stalin, which if you don't know, he's killed more people than Hitler. And then Vladimir Lenin and Karl Marx and Fidel Castro. Here's a little interesting story about this guy, Vladimir Lenin, for those of you that don't know. This guy was actually stuffed. His body has been preserved. You can go see it today in Russia if you want. There's a problem, though. It's pancaking. So if you can figure out a way to fix that problem of his body flattening itself, some of my students have recommended that we put one of those chimney puffers and blow them back up. Here's what we have in America. We have a two-party system. It is the system used by the United States, and really that's it. I mean, it's rare. And our two parties, we'll talk about here in just a second, but we all know them as the
Democrats and Republicans.
Now, where do we get our political parties from? Well, there's two people that we're going to look at. Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Thomas Jefferson preferred the power to be in the hands of states. He thought that the people would run a country better than the elite government. Thomas Jefferson supported farmers. And so he trusted the power of the people over the power of so-called elitists. Alexander Hamilton was a completely different story. He believed that people could not be trusted, that they would succumb to their passions instead of reason. George Washington, on the other hand, did not like political parties. He said parties serve their own interests, that parties would not be beneficial to the American people. And I don't think he was wrong. I mean, we could argue back and forth all day, but I think today in 2020, we are seeing this. We are seeing political parties serving their own interests. We are seeing that the American people have kind of drawn a line in the sand, and that if you even so much as, if you're a Republican, if you even so much as question Donald Trump, they kick you to the other side, and vice versa. The roots of the Democrat Party, it is the party of Thomas Jefferson, and you have to understand that the Democrats and the Republicans were at one time together. It was called the Democratic Republican Party. Traditionally, it's called the Party of the People, and we'll talk about that why here in just a second. But in 1828 is when you're going to see a split in the two parties. You're going to see the Republicans and the Democrats kind of go their own separate ways, and mostly because of slavery. The Republican Party, folks, it is the party of Abraham Lincoln. It was founded by anti-slavery Democrats. Third parties. Third parties mostly today in America are there to rival the Democrats and Republicans. A lot of our progressive ideas come from third parties, not from the two parties we have now. If you look at what's happening with decriminalizing of drugs, that was a third party idea. That was not a Democrat or a Republican idea. That was an idea from a third party that came in, presented that information, got a lot of support from the people, and then the Democratic Party said, listen, there's something to this. And they took that belief on and ideology on into their party. And so today, the third parties know they're not going to win. You know, they do occasionally win some offices like Jesse Ventura.
Jesse.
Most of the time, they're just there to influence the public. They're there to influence public opinion, which we'll talk about, and they're there to influence the parties. Most of our third parties or minor parties are either one of these two things. They're either splinted from another party, like the Bull Moose Party in 1912 was split from the Republican Party. You have single issue parties where they're just there to talk about one particular issue. And I have here environmental, like the Green Party. And you have ideological parties, which are just, you know, libertarians who want more freedom. You have socialists who want to take care of everybody more. These parties would never be elected as president in 2020, but they do influence things. And we're seeing that with Bernie Sanders. He considers himself to be a Democrat socialist. And we can see how he's taken his third party ideas and now incorporated them into a, main party. Now, let's look at the two main parties, shall we? Democrats and Republicans. The Democratic Party, folks, here's some of the most influential Democrat presidents ever. You see Bill Clinton in there and Barack Obama and my favorite, Andrew Jackson, who was an absolute psychopath. The Democrat Party is considered to be the oldest party in the United States. It is the more liberal party, which the word liberal comes from the word liberty, which means freedom. They normally pass higher taxes. So when you have a Democrat president, you're going to have more taxes. And we'll talk about why here in just a second. The Democrats believe that the federal government should do more, that they should be directly involved with the economy. They should be directly involved with social issues and businesses. And they believe that this regulation by the government is important to protect the people. They love the idea of big government. Now, before we talk about this, I want to set the stage for you a little bit more. And maybe if I do this, it will help you understand when I say things like government regulation and when I say things like small government, big government, you'll know kind of what I'm talking about. One of my favorite sports, everybody knows this, is NASCAR. I'm a huge NASCAR fan. And before 2001, NASCAR had pretty much left it up to the drivers and teams to dictate its safety. The drivers had the option of wearing full face helmets or half face helmets, open face helmets. They could wear the Hans device, which was a device that would secure your neck to the seat, or not. They had no seat regulations. You had guys like Dale Earnhardt that were literally riding on bus seats that he made in his shop at his house. There was no consistency in safety. The drivers, NASCAR took an approach of small NASCAR. They did not regulate safety. They left it up to the drivers and the teams and the tracks, by the way. The tracks were left to kind of do whatever they wanted to. If you wanted to build a soft wall around your track to protect drivers, you could, but it cost. So many of them didn't. Again, small NASCAR. That all changed in 2001. When Dale Earnhardt passed away. Now, Dale Earnhardt was more than just their greatest driver. Dale Earnhardt was NASCAR. I mean, they lost 70% of their crowd when he died, and they've still never bounced back from that. But when Dale Earnhardt died, that changed everything. NASCAR realized these drivers and teams are not protecting themselves. They don't want to wear the Hans device because it's uncomfortable. Dale Earnhardt wanted to wear an open face helmet so that he can feel the air on his face so that he knew, when to pull out in the draft and not. The tracks were not spending money. So they didn't care about driver safety. They didn't put the soft wall around. NASCAR realized we have to step in. It's time for small NASCAR to become big NASCAR and start with all these regulations. They said, look, man, teams, drivers, tracks, none of these people, we're giving them the option. We're letting them kind of do their own thing and be individuals. We're not regulating it, but There's been too many drivers that have died. The tracks are too dangerous with these concrete walls. So NASCAR stepped in. And starting in 2001, they started mandating some pretty heavy stuff. They told the car manufacturers, listen, we're going to take over from here. We're going to build the car. We're going to let y'all handle all the engines and stuff, but we're going to build the car. So all the cars looked the same because they all had to be regulated with the same safety standards. NASCAR put up soft walls at all the tracks and mandated that those tracks do that. NASCAR mandated that the drivers wear these Hans safety devices and full face helmets. They changed the uniforms. The fire retardant suits look totally different than they did when Dale Earnhardt and them were driving back in the 90s. That's an example of regulation. So when we talk about big government, small government, that's what I'm talking about. It is the oldest political party in the United States, and probably you could argue it's one of the oldest in the world, going back to ancient Greece. It is the more liberal party, which means freedom. The word liberty means freedoms. They normally pass higher taxes when you have a Democrat president because they put that money into social programs like social welfare and all these things. When you have a Republican president, they don't put as much money into those programs. So you don't have as high as taxes as you do when you have a Democrat president. Again, the Democrats believe in things like big NASCAR. They believe big government, right? That government should step in and regulate these things because people can't be trusted to do them themselves. They believe the federal government should be directly involved with the economy and social issues. They believe that having this regulation is good for the people.
The Republicans.
It is the party of Abraham Lincoln, who was the first Republican president. He was elected in 1860. And remember, the Democrats and Republicans split on the issue of... You're learning. Republican parties are considered to be more conservative, which doesn't necessarily mean religious. It just means you're a traditionalist. You like the way things have always been. However, there does seem to be a stigma with religion in the Republican Party, and that more religious people consider themselves to be Republicans. But you don't have to be. It is often referred to as the GOP, the Grand Old Party. Today, the Republican platform supports pro-business, small government. They think that the federal government should kind of do less. Stay out of my churches. Stay out of my gun closet. Stay out of my businesses. They believe that the federal government should be less involved in the economy. This kind of pull yourself by your own bootstraps kind of thing. They believe that this, when the government steps in and starts regulating these things, it's intrusive to people's lives. They very much want a small NASCAR, a small concept of government, to where they leave people and businesses to their own devices. So here you see, again, here's kind of a visual of what we just said, the difference between Democrats and Republicans, as you see here. Democrats tend to be what's considered left-wing. Republicans are called what's right-wing, and you can see sort of everything we just talked about. And I'll even take it a step further here. Again, you see just sort of some very basic, simple political differences between the two. You know, gun control laws on the left, freedom to own guns on the right. Organization of political parties. Here we go. Every political party, it was organized just like this. At the very top, you have a national committee, the national group of that political party, and then it goes all the way down to where you live. Democrat and Republican parties have local, state, and national levels, and each level is tied together. They all work together. So whether you're on the Albemarle Republican Committee or the North Carolina Republican Committee, or the Republican Committee for the whole country, you all work together to get as many of your candidates in office as possible. The National Committee, they help raise money for presidential elections. They help organize the National Convention, which we'll talk about here in just a second. The National Party Chairperson. This person runs the national committees. They manage the offices. They direct the staff. They help raise funds. And here you go. Here are your two, the Republican and the Democrat chairperson, who sort of run the parties. Every 4 years, each party throws a party. And today, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, back in the day, historically speaking, this was where the parties chose their candidates. But now we do it a little different now with primary elections and caucuses. And now the National Convention has pretty much just turned into a celebration party. It's usually held wherever the election was decided. So if you remember in 2012, North Carolina was a deciding state for Barack Obama. So it makes sense that you see Barack Obama's National Convention held at the Spectrum Arena in Charlotte. Also at the national committee levels, you have campaign committees. These committees work with the candidates to get them elected. They put together their signs, their commercials. They go around and pass out flyers and all these kind of things. And they raise money for every single level, not just the president. So another thing that the National Committee does is they write the party's platform. A platform just means, how does a party feel about a certain issue? And if you don't know, you can go to their websites, like I'm going to do on the side here. You can go to their website and read exactly how they feel about each issue. The role of the state committee, we talked about the national committee. The role of the state committee is to focus on getting officials elected to state offices. The national committee focuses on national offices. The state committee focuses on state offices. And local committees. Local committees focus on getting people elected to local positions. Right now in North Carolina, we have 13 voting districts. And remember, here's number 8 in Stanley County. We elect one representative. That representative goes and sits at the North Carolina House of Representatives, and he or she represents you and your issues from that district. Please understand that you have to vote in your own precinct. So you have a designated precinct depending on where you live, and that is where you have to vote. There are 6 functions of a political party. Number 1, to inform citizens. Number 2, carry the message of the people to the government so that they know what to do. Number 3, operate the government. They actually work there. Number 4, act as a watchdog. Like it or not, it's a good thing that we have people like Nancy Pelosi looking out, even if you disagree with her tactics and you think she's full of crap and you think she's whatever. It's good that we have politicians watching over other politicians, whether they be good or bad. Trust me, you want that. You do not want a government where people can just do whatever they want willy-nilly. You want that watchdog element, and that political parties can do for you. Link different branches and all levels of the government. So it links the executive branch to the legislative branch, and it links, state to state and national to state. All these things are kind of linked with the help of political parties. And it helps just electing people to office. Now, out of everybody in America, how do we narrow down our leaders? And how do we choose that one person to be president, or that one person to be governor, or those specific people to be in office? 2 things: nominating and campaigning. You must have your party's nomination. Your party's got to have your back, and they have to nominate you to even run for president to begin with. And you must have the public support. You have to go out there and you have to put the wheels to pavement, as they say. You got to put in the work. You have to go campaign, and you have to earn those votes by the people. It's called shaking hands and kissing babies. Now let's look at nominating. What nominating means is that the party nominates you. And how do they do that? Well, they do that through a process called primary elections. Right now in this country, we are in the middle of primary elections, and 14 of our states have had to seize them because of the coronavirus and everything going on. But you can see sort of who's winning here. You can see Donald Trump's definitely going to get it. And it's really close between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Right now, Joe Biden is in the lead. People are a little concerned about Joe Biden's health because it seems like it's deteriorating every day. So keep in mind, this could change. But just to update you, we are in the middle of this process. This process of how do we filter through 10 Democrat candidates? How do we select one out of the 10? It's called
primary elections.
So there are 2 types of primaries. There are opened and closed. Open primaries are weird. This is where you do not have to be a member of that political party to go and vote on the candidate you want to nominate from that political party. Do you see why most people don't do this? Most people do closed primaries, which means you have to be a party member to go and select and nominate that specific candidate. If you allowed Republicans in an open primary to go into a Democrat voting booth, they could select the weakest person, the person that they know is not going to beat Donald Trump in the election. So that's why most states do closed. General elections. Now, a general election is where the candidates are actually elected to offices. This is after you've selected them, after you've nominated and you've picked through the primaries between 2 people, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Who's it going to be? In November, you go and vote for the president. That's called a general election. It's where the general population goes out and votes. If selected, how do candidates win? How do candidates win the office? How does Donald Trump win over Hillary Clinton? Well, here you go. It's called campaigning, folks. They got to go out there and do it. One strategy of campaigning is that you align yourself with a celebrity. You get what's called a celebrity endorsement. And as you see here, Hillary Clinton aligned herself with people like Beyonce and Jay-Z. And here you see pictured Katy Perry. Donald Trump is shaking hands with UFC President Dana White. Campaign strategy number 2, advertising. Use the media. Put up commercials, put up signs, put up posters, whatever. You can have positive advertising, like what we see here with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. You use American colors, the good old red, white, and blue, so that when they see Barack Obama's face, they go, my God, look at him. How American is it? And look at the word under him, hope. It tugs on your old American heartstrings. Look at Hillary Clinton's positive advertising. Newsweek made an article about her a couple weeks before the election where they just said she won. It's our first female president. And the whole article, the whole magazine was dedicated to her being the first female president. That's positive advertising. When you see that, you go, my God, look at her. And then Donald Trump. What do you notice in this picture, folks? I'm going to leave it up to you. What do you notice? And speaking of American, good old Chirwan. Now, if it's not positive, then it's
Negative.
Let's look at some negatives. Negative campaigning is on an incline. They've always had it. There's always been negative in campaigning and negative commercials and attacking ads, and it's on the rise, folks. So it doesn't have to be positive. You can attack your opponent more than you brag about yourself if you want. Canvassing. Canvassing is a strategy that works, man. It's door to door. You knock on the door and you ask people, who you voting for? It's sort of a grassroots movement because it's talking to the everyday man and woman. It's out there in the field, meeting with the average American, finding out what the average American thinks about some of these political issues. Nowadays, they do it more on website polls. You can take a website poll or survey and kind of let them know how you feel. When the presidential candidates are out on the campaign trail, as they say, how do they know what to talk about to even get elected? What are the things that they do when they're campaigning? Well, it's called public opinion. Let's look at it. Good old Mark Twain said, the public is the only critic whose opinion means anything at all. The main idea is that political leaders and interest groups want to know what you think about stuff. They want to know, how do you, the average American, feel about abortion? How do you feel about gun rights? What do you think about China? What do you think about all these things? Well, how do you even know what it is? Well, most people learn through the mass media, unfortunately. Public opinion is the total of the opinions held about a certain issue. And your opinion, believe it or not, comes from a lot of places. It comes from the things that you've independently researched. It comes from your family, your friends, your teachers, mass media, the things that you see. And unfortunately, nowadays, more people believe in memes than they actually do fact. And it's kind of hard to discern what's credible and not credible. I see people all the time sharing posts on Facebook from an unbelievably unaccredited source, and they haven't even bothered to check to see if it's a credible source, but they take it at its word. Things like television, newspapers, magazines, social media, all these things, the radio, podcasting, internet, YouTube, everything impacts how you feel about things. But to be a truly informed citizen that can really tackle issues, you have to have both sides of the argument. If you're not willing to hear the other side, then you're not a truly informed citizen. You need to research an issue. Don't just preach at people, here's what to believe. No, to be a truly informed citizen, you need to listen to criticism. You need to hear the other side. You need to do your research. Never base something off of what someone tells you. Never base something off your opinion. Opinions are great, but everybody's got them. And in 2020, people think that opinions should be validated as much as fact. No, it's fine to have your opinion, but when you're spreading misinformation, please understand, facts are the most important thing. And that's what we have to get back at in this country, looking at the facts. I don't care about what you think.
Show me.
Prove it to me. Propaganda. One of the things that stirs people up the most is propaganda. You don't even know you're being played with and being toyed with. Mass media and technology, all these things mess with your head and it feeds you propaganda, folks. And not all propaganda is bad. As you see here, Rosie the Riveter, we can do it, calling women to fill the factories during wartime. As you see here, Barack Obama, hope. When you see this, you don't even know, but that's propaganda. When you see the word hope and you see these American colors, it makes you think, my God, look at that American. But understand, not all propaganda is positive. As you see here, everybody in the world at some point or another has been compared to Hitler. Every presidential candidate. And here you go. This person was hoping that when you see Trump, you would automatically think of Hitler. And they use this poster to try to drive that point home. Now, there are two types of propaganda. There's propaganda that's concealed. You don't even realize it's toying with you. That's the way that it used to be done. The way it's done now is revealed. Donald Trump does not care to hide his feelings. He tells you exactly what he thinks. Him and Hillary Clinton both practice revealed propaganda. This is where you're very aware that you're being pulled one way. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but here you go. Here are 7 types of propaganda. Number 6 is a huge one in 2020. This is where you just join a part of a crowd. You're just a part of a crowd. You know, I hate Trump because that's what a lot of people say. Or, you know, I love Trump and you can't criticize him. Like, that's bandwagon. Number 7, name calling. Ooh, we do this a lot. Number 5, plain folks. This is where I go stick a microphone in someone's a farmer's face and I go, what do you think about Donald Trump's, agricultural policies? Number 2, testimonies. This is where you just get the testimony of celebrities or well-known people that can say, this person's really doing a great job. How do we measure public opinion? How do we know what the people think? Well, we have them take polls and surveys. And please understand that not all polls and surveys are accurate, but it does help the candidates understand sort of what the public opinion is about some major issues. For instance, here is a graph from 1989 to 2015, and they asked people, do you think having stricter gun control laws would reduce the amount of violence in the country? And as you can see here, it's changed a lot. In 2015, when they did this, 61% of people said, no, having stricter gun laws is not going to do anything. But in 1989, it was almost neck and neck. So public opinion can change over time, folks. Interest groups. Interest groups are groups or organizations that are centered in one particular issue. For example, you can see here to the right, you have PETA, which is all about animals. AARP, which takes care of our senior citizens in this country. The NAACP, which is an African-American organization that goes into areas where there's discrimination, and they have been one of the biggest, most influential interest groups ever in history. You see the National Rifle Association, folks, they're concerned about what? The main idea about interest groups is for these organizations and groups to work with political candidates and work with political officials so that they can help make the change directly. Please understand, it is illegal for an interest group to talk directly to a president. They have to go through what's called a lobbyist, which is the middleman. The interest group, like the NRA, cannot directly talk to Trump. They have to send a middleman. Interest groups seek to influence policy. So, you'll see the National Rifle Association backing mostly Republicans because they know the National Rifle Association knows that the more gun laws there are, the less freedom you're going to have with guns. And so they're behind the scenes every day trying to make sure that no gun control legislation gets passed on a national level. You see this with pharmaceutical companies. Big pharma companies pays billions of dollars to interest groups to be behind the scenes, making sure that even though we're in an opioid crisis, we are not going to regulate these things harshly. Now, there's many criticisms of interest groups. Some people say interest groups are too involved in lawmaking, that some of these well-funded groups receive more attention than some less funded groups. And folks, finally, how about election day? First of all, to vote, once we've nominated the candidates, it's time to vote, folks. Here's your eligibility to vote. You have to be 18 years of age. You have to be a resident in the state that you are voting in. You have to be a citizen in the United States. You cannot have any felonies, folks. Once registered, you are assigned to a district and you must vote inside that district. Here's your voting process, folks. You want to be informed, so gather all the things you can and research. Go to the polling place. You're going to get a ballot. You're going to fill out your choices. You're going to go home and wait on the election results. If you are not here, if you're in the military and you have to go overseas or away on business, you can fill out what's called an absentee ballot. It is a way that you can vote without being here, but you have to fill that out before you leave. Don't wait till the last minute. And then exit poll. You don't have to do this, but a lot of places they'll ask you like,
hey, who'd you vote for?
And you could tell them if you wanted to, or you can troll them. Here's an example of the 2008 North Carolina sample ballot. All ballots kind of look the same, but you'll see there's a lot of positions and a lot of options and choices. First of all, the word electorate means this: everyone who's eligible to vote. So if you live in the state you're voting at, if you're a citizen, you have no felonies, if you're 18, you are an electorate. But some people don't vote because of this reason: apathy. The word apathy means I just don't care. I have a lack of interest. I am very apathetic to mathematics. Don't care. A lot of people are apathetic towards politics. They're just not interested. So this is the number one reason why people don't vote. And here you see a list of people that cannot vote: mental hospitals, felons. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A very brief, simple, simplistic overview of what we were going to do for 5 days here. Hopefully you watch this video, you take the appropriate notes. I have the notes and things listed for you in Canvas of things that you need to know. I'm going to be uploading an assignment for you to do, so you fill that out in Google Docs and submit it to me by Friday. Next week is spring break, so enjoy your spring break, and when we come back, we're going to hit the ground running, folks. This week, we're also going to look at local and state issues. It's not very big, so hopefully we can knock out these two things in this 1 week. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a safe, staying sanitized, practicing your social distancing, and until next time, peace.